class on the Mishnah Berurah and continuing the laws of the Shema. We are in Siman Pei 85, talking about the appropriate places in which one may recite the Shema, and by extension, other forms of prayer. Hope everybody is surviving the nasty Arctic blasts that we are currently receiving in our area. It is so cold. I've had to wear thermal shirts underneath for the past week. It has been intense. So as we've learned in the past about 10 or so Simanim, we are learning that it's important that one keep their place of prayer holy in order that the Shekhinah, that God's presence, may be felt. This is expressed by maintaining a clean place where one would be permitted to recite prayers and mention Hashem's name in an appropriate place. So we are going to continue that trend. So we learned that there is a special pasuk, Ve'eh Machanech Kadosh, right, and that your encampment should be holy, which is inferring that the stuff that comes out of your body, from excrement to urine and so on, be away from you, and anything that smells bad, any foul-smelling animals, animal excrement, all be kept away from places, especially synagogues. So let's talk about places where you shouldn't go when you need to recite the Shema. So that's today. Which places is it prohibited to recite the Shema? So we already talked about a bunch of different places. So we talked about that you couldn't be anywhere near latrines and urinals and places that house urinals, and also troughs of excrement, anything with the foul smell of that stuff. So let's talk about today. Today you're walking in, so in ancient times, most of that type of stuff, the excrement and so on, went into trash piles that were often in between homes, somewhat distant from where people's living spaces actually was, but not so far away. So in some places, especially where they couldn't get away from the city far enough, they often had these alleys that would become fouled. So a person who finds himself needing to recite the Shema should not walk in these fouled alleyways and think they could simply place their hand upon their mouth and recite the Shema. And even if the person had been reciting the Divrei Torah ahead of time, okay, and they come to these alleys that have these terrible, disgusting, they're just basically disgusting alleyways, it's how to look at it, they must stop, okay? When they reach an entire courtyard, so an alleyway is in between homes. The courtyard is where the homes open into a shared area. And let's say it's someplace that's kind of gross. Let's say the in some cities, especially in Europe, the stuff rolled out through the middle of the courtyard and into the street. And the idea was that eventually the water would carry it out into the river system and carry it away. So sometimes the courtyard got disgusting. And so you have to stop when you reach that type of place as well. Okay, so and if you are pausing while you're reciting the Shema, you only need to pause as long as you had actually paused. You do not need to expound upon or recite from the beginning the original words that you were reciting. Okay, so let's just go through that again slowly again. So you shouldn't go any place that's gross. Okay, and recite the Shema, and especially if the alleyway or the courtyard are both filthy, you have to pause when you come out there. The Ramah adds that you should recite you should start over again because you've taken enough time to pause to recite the entire thing. You have to start over again. We mentioned those laws in Siman 65. So what does this mean to put your hand over your mouth while reciting the Shema? This is the first time we've seen that. So Mishna explains. So you're reciting so quietly that you can't even see your lips moving. That's prohibited. We talked about even to think about Torah in these places. We said it also is prohibited. We said that earlier. We'll get to that again in a second. Okay, so when you get close, which means the in front of you, okay, behind you, meaning within its arba amos, and you can still smell the smell. Arba amos, again, the 4 arm lengths, okay, that's behind you. And if it's in front of you, you can see it, and especially so too if you can smell it, okay? And so we've already explained previously in chapter 65 about what the different rules are with pausing in these cases. Okay, so just very briefly, just to recapture some of those things. Okay, so the idea was that if you were reciting it and you took a full pause to recite to pause the middle of the Shema. Okay, so the main thing over here is to basically say that you go back to the beginning. Okay, so that's what we're referring to over here. And so he says this in Aleph over here. So one thing the Mishnah Berurah adds over here, he says that when you're pausing for the entire thing, so you don't speak, you just don't talk. Okay, so you start back. However, you are it's even if it's not because of a something that causes you to have to pause. Okay, so this rule applies for whether it's the blessings of the Shema itself, Hallel, the Megillah, anything. Okay, in this case, it wouldn't be tefillah because you're moving. It would be Shemona Esrei. Okay, but if you wanted to look this halacha up again, it's 65.4 in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, continuing along here back in 85. So we say in the second halacha, one is not allowed to even think of Divrei Torah when they're in the bathroom, and not in the bathhouse either, which we learned about last time, and any disgusting place, which we just mentioned. And that's any place that has both excrement and urine in them. Okay? And even the Ramah adds, even to learn the laws about not saying Divrei Torah in the bathhouse, you can't learn about that in the bathhouse. Okay, so it's still considered Divrei Torah. Okay, now what can you do? So the Shulchan Aruch says anything that's of a secular nature, one may speak about them, even in Hebrew. He doesn't say in Hebrew, just the holy language. Okay. You can also use words in Hebrew that may often refer to Hashem, like Rahum and Naaman, things that refers to mercy and being true. Those are all okay to say. However, the holy names that cannot be erased cannot be mentioned, even if you are talking something secular. If it should happen to be that you are there, okay, you find that you cannot refrain from saying those things, and so. Or you cannot restrain somebody else. Okay, you can't refrain them from doing that. So then you may take any you can use any message, even in Hebrew, to tell them to stop saying it. Okay. The Ramah adds, a place where a person is permitted to think about the Divrei Torah. You can also render a halachic decision, as long as you are not giving the depth of the matter. Okay, so we'll see what that means in Mishnah Berurah, because it's not quite clear what he's referring to. Where could you think about Torah but not be allowed to? So we talk about different places in the Merchatz. Okay, so here we say that in places where you can't speak, you can't think. Okay, even when a bathhouse is empty, we said. Okay, the problem was not just the filth of the place, but the people being undressed in general. Okay. So Divrei Torah means you also are not permitted to look into things while in the bathroom. that revolve around different names of Hashem, anything that is in Hebrew that that might make you think about things that could be written, and you might think about certain verses that would be prohibited. However, it is okay for a person to consider, things like think about things like increase their humility, and that they are able to think about their activities that could help them be more humble. That's okay. So what can you think about? So a person should think about, their accounts at home and what they're spending. Okay, so they shouldn't think about Torah. And on Shabbos, you should think about nice buildings and nice pictures. Okay, bring an art book in with you. Okay, so the basic Kisei rule over here is not just only in it, but also within 4 amos of it, unless you have the walls built around it, which we learned about two ago. And also, you can't smell it. That's also prohibited. And we said that previously in chapter 79, and look at the Mishna there, number 2. Now, where else is it prohibited? So he mentions, Mishna says that in a tanning house, one can't pray there. And you also can't recite any davar sheba kedusha, so no blessings, nothing like that. Okay, and that's from the moment that they begin the tanning process. You put the leather in the lye, and it immediately has a terrible smell. If you haven't smelled it yet, then that's okay. Okay, so and that's even if you're accustomed to the smell and it doesn't bother you as much. Since it's bad for other people, you should not recite anything there. Okay, and again, not to think about Torah in the bathhouse. So we say that's because of the grossness of all the steam in there, and it's kind of like excrement in the bathroom. Okay, and the reason why it's prohibited to think about it is because of, again, this idea of Haya Veye Machanecha Kadosh, and this lacks that. Okay, and this all comes from a Gemara in Shabbos 151. Now, if a person is learning all the time and they're just always running Mishnayos through their head or whatever it is, and they happen to think about it while they're in the bathhouse or in the bathroom, you can still go to the bathroom, okay? So because it's just coming against your will to do these thoughts, and you don't know what else to think about, okay? However, there's a sefer Berurah Yosef insists that the prohibited things is the speaking. Okay, and so he says, so that's why he says that it shouldn't be a problem to go into the bathroom. Okay, so that's his argument. So you wouldn't have to prevent yourself from going into the bathroom, and therefore a person who's always thinking about it should also not talk in the bathroom as well. Let's see. So some people, the Shulchan Aruch is lenient on Rachum, but the Raiva disagrees and says that you should be strict on that. And the Bach disagrees with the Shulchan Aruch and says you should also be strict. Okay. However, you can mention the word Rachum even if it seems to apply to Hashem in a secular language. Okay. So that's because it's not limited just to. If you said the merciful one, that could be anybody. Even though it seems to refer to Hashem, that would be okay. But you definitely can't say, even in a regular secular language, any type of names that would refer to God. So you can't say God, you can't say the Eternal. Okay, so that would be that. Okay, so he says that. So in any other language, referring to like that. So you can say Allah Akbar. Or Allah in the bathroom. You can't say buka in Russian, okay? Or buga, sorry, in Russian. Okay? So all those names would be inappropriate. And so any of those names, even when they're recited in Hebrew, would be okay to say, with the exception of those. So other names like the graceful one, the merciful one, the righteous one, okay? But if you say the merciful one, all right, you use the definitive article, that would be prohibited. Okay, so let's see. Now we said you should try to restrain somebody from speaking about these things, and especially if you're thinking about it, you know, then you could it's better to think about than keeping them from bad things. However, if you are having impure thoughts yourself, so then it'd be better to think about Torah rather than thinking about prohibited thoughts. So he says that would be one example where you could rely on that leniency he mentioned earlier. So one can't discuss things that revolve around making decisions. Okay, so at the end of the Shulchan Aruch, he says that you shouldn't. They shouldn't be speaking about that in the bathhouse, and that means to say them and to say anything that would sound like I'm teaching you how to do a halacha. Okay, that's not permitted, and you don't have to be so picky and slice hairs about it. I'm telling you a halacha. I'm not telling you a halacha. Okay, but really when I'm giving you, and so therefore when I'm giving you a rebuke, I should just say to you, let's not talk about this. Okay, yeah, that's what you should say. So you shouldn't say like it's prohibited because the Torah tells us it's prohibited to talk here. You can't say that. Okay, so if the person is starting to speak about holy things, you shouldn't rebuke them in a language that talks about teaching them a halacha. Okay, so if you see somebody, for example, who's shaving in the bathhouse, you shouldn't say it's prohibited to shave. Okay, you should sort of say, maybe we should find another way for you to get those hairs. Okay. So, so the Mishnah suggests that if when you are trying to follow this rule and in being trite, you're not getting your point across, you can try to explain it more to them. How impress upon them the prohibition, but you really can't teach them anything about the halacha. Okay, so even if you're not trying to, so he adds another thing over here, which is even if you're not trying to keep them from doing prohibited things, you could say to them, "Can you do this for me?" Okay, even if doing that, like let's say you said, "Can you do me a favor? I'm gonna give you $20. Can you go drop it in the pushka outside?" Okay, that would be okay because you're not specifically telling him to do that. That you're asking him to do tzedakah, for example. Okay, so the Ramah is saying that in places where it's permitted to think, you can give a simple psak, but you can't give a whole long drasha. So he says that's like the middle room in the merchatz we mentioned earlier, and other types of things like that. Okay? Now, that is the end of 85. 86 is very short here. Let's do that. Okay? So you should stay away. 86 is you should stay away from gross water. Okay? So gross water or any water that has been used for the soaking of linen. Okay? Or flax. Okay? Or hemp. So that's pishtan and cannabis. So they're all flax and hemp is used flax is the source of linen. You must stand away from them just like from any excrement. Okay. The Mishnah Berurah adds here. He says, therefore, the mikvahs that are kind of gross in the summertime, so you can't say a blessing inside of those mikvahs. So you have to actually make the bracha somewhere else. Okay. We thank God don't have that problem anymore, but that was something to keep in mind. He also points out that if a irrigation system uses gross water in them and it smells bad and it's next to the shul, so it doesn't matter who came first, because he has to still take it away because he's imposing this disgusting thing onto this local synagogue. And he also adds over here that it's not only for soaking the flax, but anything that smells gross after washing it, like, for example, the water that's been used to wash children's clothing, is also prohibited. Okay, and so everything is the same thing. As in front of you, as far as the eye can see, behind you, Arba Amos, until the smell goes away. And he says that these are all prohibited, just like they are in the Torah, like we said by Vayimachana Kadosh. Okay. So other things added over here. He quotes the Pri Megadim, who says that if there's a bad smell in the wine cellar, you can't recite the Shema down there. Anything like that. Okay. So many people are accustomed to it. So it's important to follow that appropriately. 87. How far must you stay away while reciting the Shema from the trough for which excrement is used? Okay, sometimes referred to as a chamber pot back in the day. Now, there's a few different things that these are over here. It says, so you have two things. You have the graf shel rei and the abit shel meiraglaim. So these are, one is used for excrement and one is used for urine. So the difference is that a graf shel rei is a trough that's used for excrement, and the other one is like a urinal. Okay, if they are made from clay, or they're made from wood, so they themselves you must keep them far away from you while reciting the Shema. Okay, just like from all excrement, and that's even if you took the urine one and filled it with water. But if they're made from metal, or from glass, or if they're from a glazed earthenware, then one may recite in front of them as long as they are clean and washed out well. Okay, and that's the big chiddush over here, is that the whole point is that they're gross all the time and they smell bad when they're made from the cheaper materials. If they're more expensive materials, that's okay. Okay, so, and that's, assuming that they were only meant for, let's say, for example, the one that holds urine, that's only if it was meant for that one purpose. If they're used for something else, so for example, they're used for other gray water purposes, washing, you wash your hands and then with soap or something like that, then since they're going to be cleaned out, then that's okay. Okay? And also, if you have water already in it, before you're urinating in it, then even if they're made of clay or wood, that would be okay. But if there's any smell that comes from it, then you have to be stringent. Now, if you recite the Shema or you daven anywhere near these things, and you are within their Arba Amos, you have to start over again, just like we said earlier. Okay, so there's no doubt about this. But however, you can be lenient if they're just in front of you with the being in an eyesight. Okay, so the Shulchan Aruch says you can be lenient by glass. Everyone seems to be lenient on this. As long as they don't absorb, you'd be okay with that. So if things are like plastic and things like that don't absorb, that would be okay. But if they are absorbent, you'd have a problem. And so I also say this by glazed earthenware. So things like porcelain, that would be, they are considered, they're considered like earthenware that can't be koshered. So he says that we should actually be stringent on that, the Mishna says. And so when we say they have to be clean, they have to be clean from the inside and the outside, and have no leftover residual smell. And if you have that, then it's bad. So you have to clean it out even to get rid of the remnants of the smell. Okay. If you have either one of these receptacles, okay, the urinal or the chamber pot, when they're made out of clay or they're made out of wood, if you invert them upside down, some people say it's permitted, and some people say it's prohibited, and we follow the prohibited opinion. Okay, because we think that the Mishna explains because he thinks that flipping upside down might be considered covered. However, we say that the actual thing itself is considered prohibited, and that's why you have to cover it again with something else. Okay, and if you do put something on top of that, and there's still a smell coming from them, it doesn't matter if it's been washed out or not. We say that you still have to stay Arba Amos away from the smell. So the smell is still a problem. Okay, so there's no leniencies with this. And so therefore, he explains that if you are in a place, it's like you're traveling and you have this thing around you, that you should always have them made from either glass or metal, and always cleaned after you've used them. So that way you should never find yourself in a situation to say your blessings and to learn Torah at all times. One can recite the Shema in a house that has excrement or urine in it, or these items, the chamber pots in them, or the troughs, because you are far enough away, as we learned earlier in 79. And so too, if you cover them with another utensil, even though they're inside the house with you, that's okay. And like we said, our bathrooms are sealed behind walls. Okay, and this verse says, and our bathrooms are sealed behind walls as well, and you don't smell anything, you don't hear anything, you don't feel anything. That would also be considered appropriate. Okay, you don't have to stay far away from those bathrooms like we were requiring over here. Okay, let's try to wrap this up here a little bit. Some of this material is kind of long. Let's try to finish up here. Let's see. There's one last thing over here. Okay, so we said you can cover it with a utensil. Oh, is it most of the smell and vision, not the actual measured distance? What if sprayed with the smelly receptacle, deodorizer necessary? Yeah, so it's all of those things. So even the smell. So if you're far enough away, but you can still smell it, you're not far enough away yet. Okay. When we talk about covering with a kli, covering with another utensil, even if there is some space between the receptacle and the ground, or like it's only covering most of it, that is considered covered, as long as you're not getting any smell from it. Okay, and so that's why potentially leaving these things under a bed or something else might also work, assuming that you aren't you're not smelling it at all. Okay, so that is the end of that. We covered 87. We will pick up with a new topic next week. Interesting topic nonetheless. And we'll see everybody next time. Thank you for joining today.